Hello everyone, welcome to Serum Talk radio show brought to you by Club Creation. This is your host Evangelist Gia, broadcasting live from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada with an emergency update in regards to Dr. Kent Hovind of Pensacola, Florida. I have Ernie Land, Dr. Hovind's lawyer, on the phone with comments and statements in regards to Dr. Hovind for this Thursday, July 10th, 2014. It is almost 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Hi, Ernie. How are you?
I am good. Let me make one correction. I am not a bar licensed attorney. I am an advocate for Kent Hovind, and I was trustee on the original Creation Science Evangelism Ministry Trust.
Yes, pardon me, correction.
Yeah, I don't need to come across as acting as an attorney because I've been charged with that a couple of times and been able to defeat it because I don't act as an attorney. I just advise, and I actually do some advisories on international law, uniform commercial codes, and that sort of thing.
Okay, perfect.
What we're seeing here with Kent is a attempt to file a criminal contempt charge back on him for a lis pendens that he filed when the judge claimed that the property did not belong to Creation Science Evangelism. It was properly recorded in the name of that trust. And of course, I had resigned by that time, so I was not a trustee on the ministry. He had some other trustees. I had moved from Pensacola, so I had offered my resignation, and there were other trustees on the ministry. And what we saw is they claimed that that property did not belong to the ministry, that it belonged to Kent Hovind. So they claimed the property on the the 941 taxes, and all of the interest and penalties that they like to tack on, which is far exceeding any tax that was ever due. They claimed that property in lieu of that. And then Kent, as a individual, filed back a lis pendens on it to stop that action, which was a lawful constitutional filing. And now the court has come back and said because of that filing that he has violated the court order and is in criminal contempt, and they're asking him to respond. Again, what they're trying to do is place more time on him. He was triple sentenced, if you will. The sentencing guidelines for 941 typically runs in the 3-year range. In fact, many people never serve any time, but they're just hit with penalties. And they gave Kent 10 years, so they more than tripled the guideline sentencing. And again, what they're trying to do now is because he continues to try to fight for the U.S. Constitution and his rights under that Constitution, they're trying to give him additional time and keep him in because he's reaching a point where he's served 85% of his time and he's about to be allowed to go free.
Okay, so my understanding is that what's going on is unlawful then. They're not supposed to be doing this?
You know, I like to use that term unlawful because with the Constitution, it's common law. The Constitution was set up for the common person. And so therefore it is unlawful by that Constitution. What they've done is they placed statutes, codes, and regulations that they're saying he's violated, illegally violated. And there's a difference between unlawful and illegal. And what we find is that many of the statutes, the codes, and the regulations that are imposed upon the American people, they are unconstitutional, they're unlawful. But until someone wants to spend the millions of dollars it takes to take that statute, that regulation, or that code to the Supreme Court and have it overturned, it stands as law. And so they claim the difference in the term there is illegal. So they're claiming that Kent is doing something illegal in precedent with the court, and they're trying to, again, sentence him on criminal contempt for simply trying to exercise his rights under the Constitution.
Okay, so he's not doing anything wrong, right? For people who are listening in, he's not doing anything wrong?
He's not doing anything unconstitutional. the thing that they consider to be wrong is the fact that he's holding the government's feet to the fire. He's holding the judicial system's feet to the fire to abide by the U.S. Constitution, and what they're trying to do is impose those unlawful, unconstitutional statutes, codes, and regulations upon him.
And for those who are new and haven't really got a chance to follow along with Dr. Hovind's case, can you just brief the public a little bit about Dr. Hovind and his journey with the American legal system over the last 7 years and 8 months plus? In brief.
Initially, he had set up a pure trust organization, constitutional trust organization, as a ministry. And he was acting by working with other people, putting out the word. Of course, they don't like the fact that he holds their feet to the fire when it comes to creation versus evolution, right down to the fact that they actually have statutes and codes themselves, that if a theory has been disproven, there's a period of time that it must be taken out of the school books, and they don't abide by that. So Ken held them to the fire on that. And throughout this time with the tax situation, he was working a lot of what he considered evangelists, people that come in and helped him with his work. And of course, he did compensate them for that. And they initially went after Ken Hovind in that trust, and they tried to go after him for tax evasion, saying that he was not paying his taxes. Over a period of several years, in several grand juries, that was disproven, and Kemp could not be charged under tax evasion. So then they turned the gambit, and they started going after him for something we call 941 taxes. That's where an employer has to withhold taxes from the employees and pay the government a matching portion and pay the government the taxes that they withhold. And Kent was not doing that because he considered everyone to be separate ministers in their own ministry, doing evangelical work with him, and they chose to come in and work through him. And so therefore, when he paid them, it was up to them to pay their taxes, to choose to pay their taxes, and he didn't withhold taxes. So they went after him under the guise of 941 taxes, and on that they were able to actually draw a charge against him and find him guilty on the charge of not withholding 941 taxes from what they considered employees.
Okay, so for those that are watching in Canada, I guess it would be similar to like when you have subcontracting, and they would be considered subcontractors. The people that were working for Dr. Hovind were responsible to file their own taxes as any subcontractor would, but they failed to do that, and in turn, the government went after Dr. Hovind for those taxes. Is that correct?
That's pretty good. It's called independent contractors in America. And because they are independent, it is upon them to either set the precedent that it's lawful money that they don't have to pay tax on. Some of them followed that guidelines, and some of them, many of them didn't file. I wouldn't know who did and who didn't, so I couldn't really relate back to who may have filed on that as income, because I would have to go through all of their individual tax filings to be able to give a correct answer on that. But that was the guys. That was what the government come in and said, is that he was not withholding the money, and it was his responsibility to withhold that money and pay the employer portion along with it. And for that, they were able to get a charge against him and have it stand up in court.
Okay, and so do you know where we go from here? Like what the next steps would be in regards to showing support or raising awareness for what's going on with Dr. Hovind, and how the public and whoever is listening and watching could possibly show their support and any sort of actions that the public could take in order to overturn or to change what's going on, to have an impact?
If you are an American citizen, my suggestion, if you're an American citizen, would be to write your congressional leaders. the U.S. congressional leaders, those that are at the federal level. And we need to write them. We need to hold Ken up in prayer. We need to let them know how Ken has been wronged in the system itself and how they're treating him. They have violated over the past 6 or 8 weeks. Even the Bureau of Prisons has violated his rights. And he's had a lawyer, a bona fide licensed lawyer, bar associational licensed lawyer, write them and name a number of things that they're in violation of. And what they do is they just move him and hide him again. And then you have to go track him down and try to find him in that Bureau of Prisons system, find out where he's at, try to get him to where you can communicate with him again. And it seems like that seems to be their latest guys. They've moved Kent 20 times in the last less than 8 years. He's been moved 20 different locations. I've actually had prisoners that I've interviewed tell me, when you move someone that much, you're trying to get them killed, because what you're trying to do is throw them in with another violent group of criminals that they don't have any rapport with, in hopes that they will anger somebody and that person will take action against them in the prison system. So again, that's just a theory, but I've been told that by several people that serve time, that they kind of look at you when you say 8 years and been moved 20 times and go, wow. In fact, one gentleman looked at me and says, why are they trying to get him killed? The first words out of his mouth. So what we need to do, we need to pray for Kent. We need to be writing our congressional leaders. I don't know, to what extent we can help. When you have the ex-governor of Alaska actually say we have an imperial president and that it's Congress's responsibility to impeach that president because of constitutional violations, that's at the highest level that you're having accusations of people acting unconstitutionally. So how do we rein in all these government agencies and have them abide by the U.S. Constitution? Basically all I can say is we have to pray and write our congressional leaders, and those congressional leaders have to make a stand.
And is there something that you could share with the public about the Second Chance Act? Are you familiar with that?
Say that again, please. What now?
The Second Chance Act that sends prisoners, nonviolent prisoners and offenders home early to lower the population of the prison and the cost of the prison?
Absolutely. And he was most recently at Maxwell Prison in Alabama, and they're overloaded with prisoners. And what's happened here is Congress has basically put it out there because we have so many nonviolent offenders in our prison system. America leads the rank of free country, what's called a free country. We lead the rank in people being in prison that have not committed a violent crime. We compare in America with those third world countries that have dictatorships and are evil nations, as we call them. We lead the ranks along with them having political prisoners, nonviolent prisoners. And so Congress tried to push through some acts to allow prisoners to get out that were nonviolent much sooner. Kent is actually at a point in time that he could be turned loose right now if they enacted and abode by those laws that Congress are allowed. It's up to the prison to allow it. And he was in a place that was overpopulated and should have been allowed. But it didn't take place. Again, he is a political prisoner. And that's ultimately, when you put Ken on a Greyhound bus and ship him from New Jersey to Alabama of his own free will in clothing, and give him a ticket and tell him to leave one prison and report in at another prison, that's against the Bureau of Prison Regulations. They violated their own regulations, but that right there proves they know Kent is nonviolent.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. And I've set up a website. It's called www.clubcreation.org for all the viewers that are watching and listening. Please be sure to visit that website in order to find out all the ways to help Dr. Hovind. A number of them, which Ernie Land just mentioned in this interview today. I would like to thank you so much, Ernie, for everything that you're doing for Dr. Hovind. And I just can't express enough what it means to me to have the chance to talk to you. So thank you so much. I'm truly honored to have you be a part of this episode today. And I will be sure to be in touch with you over the next several weeks to find out what will transpire. Is there any sort of timeline or anything like that you can give us in regards to what we could hope for over the next few weeks?
Gina, I really can't. I wish I could, and that is the trial we're facing here. With the Bureau of Prisons continue to move Ken around, and us to be left in the dark as to where he's going and why. All I can do is speculate, and all I can say is write your congressional leaders if you're in America. And if you're not, everyone, please lift him up in prayer. God has kept his hand of protection on Ken. Ken has been with some of the most violent offenders in this nation, and he's not been harmed.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly, and that just shows you the power of the Holy Spirit and the power of God at work here. But then again, we do have an enemy, and it's not flesh and blood. Our adversary is the devil, and it's his objective to shut Dr. Hovind up and lock him away from the world so he can't continue winning souls and being a fierce soldier for Christ like he's been over the last 30 plus years. I really do thank you, Ernie, for being with us today. And unfortunately, I've been left speechless and I don't even know how to respond. But the only thing I can say is that I'm honestly grateful, and I do have so much gratitude for you. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. And again, everyone just lift Ken up in prayer, and God's hand will be upon him, and he is keeping Ken. And Ken is still winning souls in prison.
Thank you so much. That this has been very uplifting and inspiring, and I look forward to being in touch with you, Ernie. God bless you and keep you all the days of your life, and I pray for you.
Thank you, and Lord bless, Gina.
Yes,
Good
thank
day.
you. Bye. All right, folks, so that was my interview with Ernie Land. He's an advocate for Dr. Hovind and Dr. Hovind's cause. I don't really have a lot more to say at the moment. I have a written statement here. It says, American government has circumvented the U.S. Constitution at its very core. We have an imperial president that creates an unconstitutional law by executive order, a legislature that refuses to do its job by exerting their powers to rightfully impeach him for his unconstitutional orders, and finally a judicial system that has learned from his unlawfulness by calling a common man's attempt to file lawful claims frivolous. Kent Hovind filed lawful lease pendants on the properties of the government seized. The court realizes they are lawful, but claim they are frivolous in order to impose criminal contempt charges on Dr. Hovind. Dr. Hovind was sentenced more than triple what his charge was allowed by the sentencing guidelines, and that triple sentence is not enough. Because he still stands as a common man and fights all their unlawful, unconstitutional statutes, codes, and regulations, they continue to act as a third world country under a dictatorship to bring him into submission. Dr. Hovind may lose on this earth, but in the life to come, all these judicial fools and regulators will be tried and convicted of putting their hands on one of God's elite. All true believers need to hold this man up in prayer. That was a written statement from Ernie Land, who we just spoke with. Friends, brothers and sisters, fellow saints and disciples of the Lord Jesus Christ, I call on you today in hopes that we can come together for a common cause that is far greater than each of us individually. I pray that you would take the opportunity to visit www.clubcreation.org to find out all the ways that you can move forward and help Dr. Hovind through this ordeal. I will be sure to post updates regularly, and I do suggest that everyone visit www.zello.com in order to download Zello app onto their smartphone in order to stay updated live over two-way radio. The channel is Club Creation, all capital letters. Once you download Zello onto your smartphone, you create a username and a password. Then your profile will be created. Once your profile is created, you simply go to search channels and you enter capital letters Club Space Creation and my channel will pop up. At the Club Creation channel on Zello, we regularly play Dr. Hovind seminars, recent Dr. Hovind interviews, daily and weekly Dr. Hovind blogs, as well as any news or updates pertaining to Dr. Hovind and his current situation. And it is also a wonderful venue for fellowship and biblical discussion. I thank you all for tuning in. Until next time, God bless you, power to the people, and as Dr. Sorry, I'm very shook up. And as Dr. Hovind would say, see you at the finish line.